Thank you again for coming. I'm so excited for you for tonight, and I'm excited for myself. I've seen Chris do this presentation a couple of times now, and I'm absolutely still coming over the high that I had the first time I heard it. Most importantly, guys, is just relax. Nobody's going to ask you to buy anything tonight. Nobody's going to sell you anything tonight. You know, nobody's going to kind of try to, you know, twist your arm or trick you in any way. It's pure education. So take everything that he's saying and apply to your own lives. Tell your friends and seriously, it's like take him up on his education and on his knowledge and what he's been trying to accomplish for other people and for himself. It's priceless. So enjoy. Chris, thank you so much. Come up here.
Okay. Well, that was really nice. You said a lot of nice things. I'm just a guy like you, and for the last 8 years I've been doing something I never would have thought I've been doing. But I will say the one thing that I love to do, and that I've always loved to do, is this, speak. I love public speaking. I've always been somebody who enjoyed being on a stage in front of other people. I've tried everything there was when I was young. I was on a stage singing, dancing, you name it. None of those worked. But this is where I belong. Now, in my 20s, most people, they say they fear public speaking more than they fear dying, right? And so you can imagine in my 20s, knowing that this was something I wanted to do, the quest for me was, how am I going to exercise this gift? Because it really is a gift. I enjoy being up here, and I never knew how I was going to apply it in the real world. Certainly not how I was going to monetize it. And so I remember having a conversation with a very close friend who was exactly the opposite. He's always been a car fanatic. We grew up together, and this is a kid who I remember going to baseball tournaments with him, and we would be on the highway, and it was fun for him to name every car as it went past us the other way. And it was pretty fast. You're going 100 kilometers, they're going 100 kilometers, and he would just name every car as it went by. Passionate, ended up an executive in car marketing, now works in Michigan and Colorado, doing exactly what he wanted. But for me, I had a skill, but I didn't know how to apply it. So in my early 30s, I got a job, and the job was working for a company called Richard Robbins International. And Richard Robbins International is the leading real estate training company in the country. So my job, he hired me to go office to office all over the country, and I would put on a 1-hour workshop helping real estate agents to become better entrepreneurs. The workshop was called Plan, Produce, and Profit. And I remember I had 5 interviews to get this job. I was so excited about the job. To have 5 interviews. Later, I found out the reason I had 5 interviews was because the first time I had my interview, they asked me, how much money do you want to make? And I said, if I could speak for a living, I'd do it for free. And then he said, no, really, how much money do you want to make? And I said, I don't know, 50,000. And so the CEO later told me, the problem was I was applying for a sales job, and they needed me to make more money than 50,000, so they were worried that they were hiring the wrong guy. Well, within 9 months working for that company, the job was this. I would go and do that workshop, and at the end I would ask everybody to pull out $800 out of their pocket and buy a ticket to a bigger workshop. Okay, so that was the job. Well, in 9 months working for the company, I became the leading salesperson in the country, and I didn't really sell. In fact, Richard used to talk to me aside, and he'd say, I don't know how you do it, because I'm very adverse to selling. So when Todor said, there's nothing to buy here today, he's absolutely right. I don't have anything to sell you, just have something to tell you. And anyways, I was the #1 salesperson after 9 months. I was making over $200,000 in that first year in commissions. It was a pretty good job, but it was a curse, because what happened was I found myself wanting to be in the audience as opposed to being up on the stage. For the first time in my life, I was so attracted to what I was teaching. I felt like the principles Rich, as a mentor for me, was teaching me about being an entrepreneur made so much sense. I had this great idea. I thought, why don't I just abandon this job and start a business in an area of something I know nothing about, okay? And if I can make that successful, this is how my brain works, I thought, well, I'll be a successful entrepreneur, and then I can spend the rest of my life speaking about it, right? So that was the idea. Well, we're not quite there yet. We've got a very successful business, but it's kind of taken on a life of its own, and it's definitely quenching the thirst that I have to speak. So I'm about to share with you some pretty powerful information that I found out just by virtue of going down that path of starting my own business. I decided to start a business in the area of mortgages. And the reason I chose mortgages was simple. I knew nothing about it, so I felt like clean slate. I could start this business. And every office I went to while working for Rich, I would go into a real estate office and I'd see that there was a space there for a mortgage broker, and there was nobody there. I started asking the real estate owners, how much business of all the houses that are being sold by all of your agents, how much of it is being captured by this mortgage broker? How much do you think they told me consistently? What percentage of the business was being captured by the mortgage broker? Yeah, less than 10%, right? So less than 10%, I thought, well, what a great opportunity. I mean, I should be a mortgage broker. I could capitalize on all this. All I have to do is make relationships. And it's not that simple. But at the end of the day, there was a real opportunity to provide service. And then I found out an even bigger opportunity to provide education in the area of mortgage brokering. Here's why. How many of you went through upwards of 18 to 20 years of schooling in our system as kids, right? And how many went through, say, 5 years of high school and maybe 3-4 years of university? Yes, some of you? Okay. And in all of that education, how many people along the way told you how you were going to manage what was going to be, for most of us, our largest liability, a mortgage? Did you ever learn that?
No.
Neither did I. So I knew nothing about mortgages. I knew even less about how to have a mortgage and manage it properly. But so what I did is I started the company by doing a survey. I asked people. I said, so how do you manage your mortgage? And the people I asked were people I trusted, right? So my mother, my father, people who were inherently close to me that wouldn't lie to me. And here's what happened. Every person I asked gave me a different answer. So you know what I concluded? Yeah, see, my educational background is psychology. I studied intuition, I studied cognition, and so the way people think, right? And so what I know about the way people think is that most people care a lot about what other people think of them. And so what I concluded was, if everybody's telling me something different, maybe none of them know, but nobody wants anybody to know that they don't know. And it was a really good conclusion. It paved the way for exactly what you're about to see tonight, because I went looking for the answers. And here's how I found the answers. I found them in numbers, because numbers never lie. I always tell you the truth. So the beautiful thing about tonight is I'm going to show you a different way to do your banking that will make a tremendous change in the way that you do that banking from now on. And the numbers should be significant enough to motivate you the way they have thousands of others that have done this for over the last 8 years. And when I got started and I stumbled onto what I'm about to show you, I needed a place to teach it. And at first I didn't have that place. So I knocked on the doors of Chapters and Indigo executives and I said, hey, I discovered a way to teach the average Canadian 2-income earning family how to pay their mortgage off in half the time without making extra payments. And I want to do it in your stores for free. And guess what they said? No chance, right? So I said, well, how many of you have mortgages? And they said, all of us. I said, well, great. Before you allow me into the stores, let's make a deal. I'll come and I'll do the presentation for you. If it makes sense for you, then you let me in the stores. And the rest is history. I ended up doing a whole year of workshops inside their stores on Wednesday nights, starting with the executives. And it was great, except that what happened from there is every time I did one of these workshops, and we weren't charging for them, so it was just my time, every time we did this workshop, somebody in the audience would come to me after and say, hey, can you come and do this at my workplace? Can you come and do this at my investment club? Can you come and teach my family, my friends? It snowballed so quickly, but the problem was we weren't making any money. So it was taking all my time, we weren't making any money. So I ended up opening a brokerage. And I figured, well, if I'm going to give the education away, then at least we can help people get into mortgages. And the nice thing about mortgage brokering is the fee that the bank pays us to broker mortgage for you pays for the education. So it's a win-win-win, right? Keeps the lights on and doors open. That's how it started. It's evolved since then. And I'll get into how. How many would agree that a penny saved is a penny earned? It's an old adage, but how many actually believe in it? Couple. By the way, how many are not going to put their hand up no matter what I ask tonight? Okay, just at least we get on the level, aren't we? The fact is that a penny saved is absolutely a penny earned, but I'm not here anymore to show you how to pay your mortgage off in half the time. I'm here to show you how to build equity. What I learned over time was that equity is great if you have it, but not if you're not using it. Does it make sense? If I asked you to guess what percentage of all the Canadian real estate across the country is owned by the consumer and what percentage is owned by the bank, what percentage do you think is owned by the consumer? No. Of all the real estate in Canada, a certain percentage is owned by the banks and a certain percentage is owned by the consumer. What percentage do you think is owned by the consumer? In other words, how much equity do we own? How much? 70. 10. How many think it's closer to 10 than it is to 70? It's 68. 68% of all the real estate in Canada is owned by the Canadian consumer. And you know what most of it is doing? Nothing. And it's a shame because the thing is that the bank owns 33% and how much of it is working for them? Every single penny. There isn't any of it sitting around. And if you can understand just that, then you can understand the rest of the power of this presentation. I'm going to show you how to build equity. Then I'm going to show you what to do with it. Okay? Now before we get started, washrooms are just down the hall here on the right. I think when you go in there, on the left is the men's, on the right is the women's. I'm going to give everybody one of these workbooks. Now listen, I'm not much of a note taker myself, and if you're not, you don't need to use the notebook, but some people are, so we want to accommodate them. Actually, I'll just get you to take one and pass it on. That'll be easier for me. Okay, there you go. All right, and how many of you need a pen? And if you don't need a pen, how many want a pen with our logo on it? Okay, just take one and pass it on. Okay, they're good pens. Okay, so I'm the CEO of a company called Magnetic Mortgages and Investing. You know what magnetic is synonymous with? Attraction. Yeah. I used to work for Disney. Prior to working for Richard Robbins, I worked for Disney. I worked on their cruise ship. Yeah, pen? Yeah. I worked for Disney on their cruise ship when I was 24 years old. It was a really exciting experience. And what I learned about Disney was that they will stop at nothing to create magic. And you know what magic is? Magic's taking something that's perceived to be impossible and making it what? Possible. That's it. That's what magic is. And this guy did a great job of bottling that up and putting it up on a shelf. We all buy it. It's fantastic. You know, I could share with you story after story after story of how they exemplified magic at Disney. I'll just share one with you. In the year 1999, how many of you remember the Millennium New Year? Remember when we turned from 1999 to 2000? Anybody remember the climate of the world at that time? What people thought was going to happen that night? What do people think was going to happen? The end of the world. I thought I was in the safest place in the world. We were in the middle of the ocean with two Disney ships parked next to each other. I thought if everything else goes right up in flames, we'll be safe out here for a while anyways. Well, they had the most spectacular party you could ever imagine. Each ship carried 3,000 passengers and 1,500 crew, and everybody was partying like the world was going to end, right? We weren't going to have anything to go back to. So you can imagine that anything that can or could happen in that type of climate did happen that night. Well, what's Disney known for most? Cleanliness. There's no cleaner place, public place on the planet than Disney World. Would you agree? It's unbelievable. They did a study once to find out how far somebody would walk in their park with a piece of garbage in their hand before they drop it on the ground. They found out it was 10 to 12 feet. Next time you go to Disney World, look around. Every 10 to 12 feet, you're going to see a garbage can or someone sweeping the ground. Okay? It's how it works over there, and it's amazing. They're the only ship on the planet to pay millions and millions of dollars to the coast guards of every country so that they could decorate their ship in Disney colors. All the other ships are white with orange lifeboats. You take a look at a Disney ship or Google it when you go home, you'll see it's exactly the Disney colors. They just don't stop, right? Well, this night, the party was so unbelievable. I was a bartender on the ship, so my job all night was just to pour champagne. It was fantastic, right? Well, by 5 o'clock in the morning, the ship looked like the hurricane had come through. It was as un-Disney-like as you could imagine. And we got off the ship that night and down back to our barracks and had a little nap. And when we came back up at 8 o'clock to serve mimosas, which people needed like a kick in the head, that next morning, the place was immaculate. It was like an army of Disney elves had come out while we slept for 2.5 hours and rebuilt the ship entirely. And so I witnessed this. It was amazing. I came up on top deck and I witnessed an officer, they're the guys with the white shirts and the stripes, talking to a gentleman about my age, I'm 39 now, about my age with a son, couldn't have been more than 5 or 6. And you know how kids are, right? Kids are very inquisitive, they don't like to be tricked, you know, they see Mickey here and then they see Mickey there, they got 100 questions as to how it all happened, right? They want to uncover the secret. Well, if you have any questions or concerns throughout, just throw up your hand and ask. Somebody else is probably thinking it. I'm going to cover a lot of the questions. I've done this about 4,000 times. That said, don't be shy in here because it's your money at stake, okay? Okay, so true or false, this is how we were all taught to bank in Canada. We have these 2 main accounts. They form the hub of our banking day to day. Income goes into your checking account. Stop me if you think I'm wrong. Checking account payments come out, and then whatever's left over moves over into some sort of savings vehicle. That part's up to you. Fair? This is what we were taught. This is what my mom did. This is what my dad did. This is what my sisters did. Everybody I know did this, and every time I start up into a new room, I give everybody the option to tell me I'm wrong, and everybody says, yep, this is what I do. The question is, why do you do it? Okay? Presumably we do things for a purpose, and usually the purpose is gain, right? We move in the direction of pleasure or away from pain. True? Okay, so what's the pleasure in banking this way? Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, what's in it for me? I mean, if I tried to sell you something, that's the first question you'd ask me. What's in it for me? But do we ask each other, what's in it for me by banking this way? Tell me the gain. Anybody? There's no gain. We'll just cut that part short. There's no gain here, but who gains?
Bank.
Yeah, because what the bank does is the bank makes a deal with you that says this. You put the money in a checking account, we'll pay you nothing, but we'll protect it for you, right? You put the money in a savings account. I heard a commercial on the radio on the way over here tonight. CIBC was advertising, and they really make it sound great. 2%. 2% return on your money if you deposit money into a CIBC bank account. But it doesn't get me excited. I can tell it doesn't get you excited. I can see the look on your face, right? So the fact is what they're saying to you is, we'll keep your money, and as long as it's available to you and you need it, we have a deal? And we all say yes. So we mortgage security and certainty for no return, right? It's leverage that the bank does, because you know what they do, and I'm simplifying it. In fact, oversimplifying it, but just for the purposes of landing a point, is that the bank takes your money and they lend it back to you in the form of 3 main products: a credit card, a line of credit, or a mortgage. Now, like I said, I'm oversimplifying it. It's not all they do, but it's really, that's the circle of life at the bank. You put the money in the bank takes the money, lends it back to you, and makes a return on your money, right? I mean, when were you ever taught to use a line of credit as a leveraging vehicle instead of a borrowing vehicle? We're always taught to use our credit card as a borrowing vehicle. We don't have the money today, we can use a credit card. We want to buy a line of credit, we don't have the money today, we can use the line of credit. But we were never shown how to leverage money, which is what the bank does every single day. My father once said to me, take financial advice only from those who make more money than you. Yeah? Now, that's not true. I don't live by that. There are people out there who don't have a lot of money, but actually have a lot of smarts about money. Their circumstances have prevented them to make money. But what entity out there better than the bank to take financial advice from? So we can hate on them, or we can really admire them and look at what they do and flip it. And that's what I want to do tonight. I want to show you how you can flip it. Stop using this because it doesn't benefit you. It's your money. And start using the bank's money. What if I told you that you could get rid of the checking account and savings account altogether, use only your credit card, line of credit, and mortgage to do your day-to-day banking, and you would be ahead 4 to 5 times faster in terms of building equity? Sounds like a crazy proposition, but I'm going to show you how it works. Who said it is? Yeah, it sounds like it. But there's a reason why I told you this is going to sound too good to be true at first. You've got to see the mechanics and the math. Once you see the mechanics and the math, I got to tell you, if someone asked me, and I've been asked in interviews before and whatnot, what's the real genius of the workshop? The genius is that we're able to take this complex complex system and teach it to people, learn how to teach it to people in a language they could understand inside an hour. That's the magic today. Nothing I'm going to show you is magical. It's just that the magic is that I can give it to you in a language you can get inside an hour. You had a question? No. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight first is I'm going to show you how to abandon checking account, savings account in favor of credit card, line of credit, mortgage. Now in order to do that, before I show you how those three accounts play together in a different way than you're used to, you have to understand how each one works. And they're all created differently. The one thing they have in common is they all charge interest, but they don't charge interest the same way. So if you just look at interest rates, you're not going to be getting true numbers in your mental calculations. You need to understand how they work. So let's start with the worst of the bunch, the mortgage. I call it the serial killer of debt. You know why? Because it keeps pounding you and pounding you and pounding you, and it doesn't care what happens in your life. It doesn't care if you have another child. It doesn't care if you lose your job. It doesn't care about any of that. It just continues to hit you because a mortgage charges interest every single day. Daily interest. In fact, the average mortgage in Canada charges more interest per day than it costs to feed a family of 4. Okay? And that's important to understand because we just don't see it. See, what I would love is if every time you used your debit card, a little message came up on the screen that told you what your mortgage charged you in interest today. Because if we made it aware, if there was awareness, right, you'd pay more attention to it. Because we don't see it every day, we don't pay as much attention to it. It also compounds twice a year. Okay, does everybody understand compounding? That wasn't convincing. So what I'm going to do is show you how compounding actually works in a language you can understand and you'll never forget. So here's how it works. What's your name? Use as an example. Tony? Tony, good to meet you. So let's say Tony, let's say I need $1 and I ask Tony to lend me $1 and he says I have the $1 but I drive a hard bargain. Here's how it's going to be. I'll lend you the $1, I'll give you a year to pay it back, and I want 100% interest. How much do I have to pay Tony back? $2, right? A year from now. So, $1, 100% interest, $2. It's really simple. And that's simple interest. There are two types of interest, simple and compounded. That's simple, very easy. Okay? Compounded is something different. That's where I say, Tony, look, I don't need a year to pay you back, and I certainly don't want to pay 100% interest, something we could work out. And Tony, since he's such a nice guy, says, sure, we can make a deal. But I'm the lender, and let's remember, lender, he who has the money makes the rules, right? So we understand each other. Here's the deal I'll make with you. I'll give you the $1, and I'll split the year into 2 6-month terms, and at the end of this first 6 months, I'll give you one chance to pay me back everything you owe me to that point, which would be $1. Still 100% interest for the year, so I owe him 50 cents. And at that point, I can get out of the loan for $1.50. Does everybody understand that part? Okay? So $1.50. Now the 6-month part comes, and I don't have a full $1.50. He's going to say, keep the money. Like I come with $1.45, and he goes, no, that wasn't the deal. The $1.50 or nothing. So now I keep the $1.45 that I had, and now we start a new loan for the next 6 months with a starting balance of $1.50. Because I had my chance, but I blew it, right? So $1.50, and then I pay 50% on the $1.50, which means I now owe Tony $2.25 at the end of the year. Does it make sense? That's compounding twice a year. Now, if you think we have it bad, in America, it's 12 times a year. Happens every single month. That's also what your credit card will do, is compound 12 times a year. Now this isn't a lot on $1, but you can imagine on $300,000, $400,000, $200,000 twice a year, because you can't possibly pay it all off in 1 month, so it just keeps going and going and going. And the thing about the mortgage is, once the interest is there, you got to pay it. Doesn't matter how long it takes, you got to pay it. So we need to take a preventative approach, and that'll be in the system that I show you. So that's the credit line on mortgage. So all you need to understand: daily interest, compounding twice a year, villain. Okay? This is the villain, this is what we're going to try to attack. Now, the line of credit is exactly the opposite. Your best friend in the borrowing industry. The best vehicle to use to borrow money. So if you need to borrow money, you should put it on a line of credit. But not just any line of credit, a personal line of credit, and otherwise known as unsecured. Unsecured. There are two types of lines of credit. There's secured and unsecured. Unsecured means There is no security. It's like a credit card, okay? Secured means it's attached to your house, okay, or another asset. And so if you don't pay, the bank just takes the house, sells it, gets their money back. Okay, it's no different than a mortgage. Line of credit, unsecured, charges higher rates than a mortgage line of credit, for example, but the interest is charged simple, not compounded, which is much less aggressive as we just went through, and it calculated not daily, but once a month. And the key here is it's charged based on the average daily balance at the end of the month, which means if I start with a high balance and I end with a high balance, but the balance for the rest of the month is way down here, I may start with a high, end with a high, and pay interest somewhere in the middle. Does that make sense? Because of the way it calculates average daily balance, not every day. Okay? So we have a leveraging aspect to this account that we can strategically manage it. And because we can do that, you'll see how powerful it is in the system. Credit card, exactly the same as a mortgage, charges interest daily, compounds 12 times a year. But there's two things about a credit card.
12 times? You put 2 times.
Credit card.
Credit card.
Mortgage is 2, credit card is 12. Okay? There's two really neat things about a credit card. Two things that work to the consumer's advantage. Does anybody know what they are? You think of one.
Grace period. Grace period.
Yeah, one is a grace period. You can lend yourself money on a credit card for 30 to 45 days and pay no interest as long as you pay the loan back, right? So I can give myself a 1-month loan if I want from my credit card. As long as I pay it back in 30 days, I don't pay any interest. And what do all the credit card companies do to try and compete for our business? They offer us what? Points.
Points.
Yeah.
Or pay it off within 6 months of interest.
Yeah. So imagine if I could rack my credit card up every month, get the points, and pay it off every month. I pay no interest, I get the points. You with me? That's a cool thing. Okay, and inside the system, it's going to be a really powerful piece. So I'm going to show you how these three accounts play together, and the aha moment is about 5 to 7 minutes away. Okay? So let's set it up this way. Here's your mortgage, and let's put this at 5.15%. I'll tell you why in a second. We'll put the line of credit at 6% interest, and we'll put the credit card at 19.99. Now, if you're a note taker, here's where I think you should pause taking notes and just watch and just listen, because I'm going to give a concept to you, and the temptation. Yeah, the temptation is to do one of two things: write and miss it, or start to try and figure out how your situation fits. Okay, but what I'm going to show you here with numbers is a concept. We can deal with your particular situation afterwards, and if you look in your book, there's a card in there. The card is there for a specific reason. It's for you to tell me, I want to continue the conversation, because what I figured out early on in this was that this is not the right forum for any of you to feel comfortable putting your hand up and sharing your whole personal situation with me while everybody else is listening. So I'm going to show you the average 2-income earning family in Canada with the average mortgage, average line of credit, and so on. There's a little bit of trust here. You'll have to trust my math. I've been doing this a long time. But I don't want you to miss it. Okay, so just pay attention to the concept here, and then we can work on your particulars later. Okay, so the average 2-income earning family in Canada earns $6,000 a month and spends $5,000, meaning they have discretionary income of $1,000. The discretionary income is what's left over from your income after your expenses are all paid. It includes your mortgage payment, includes everything, okay? So this family can do anything they want with this money, and the average mortgage in Canada is $220,000. Now the average 5-year fixed rate mortgage for the last 10 years is at 5.15%. I use that number because today's rates are very low. They're atypically low. Okay, it would look really good, but they're not typical numbers. This is the average over the last 10 years. Okay, 5.15%. And the most popular amortization length being chosen right now by Canadians is 30 years. So that mortgage 30 years, 5.15 on $220,000 will generate a payment of $1193.89 a month. Okay, pretty reasonable. Any guesses as to how much interest this mortgage will accrue over 30 years?
About double. 150,000.
150. You're saying about
Double.
Yeah, it's $210,000. Okay, $210,000. Okay, so this is the average mortgage payment, or the regular mortgage payment. We're starting with a balance of $220,000, and let's assume that this family comes into my office, referred from somebody, and says, hey, I heard that you teach this great system. I want to know what we need to do. And say, well, before we get started in telling you exactly what to do, there's a couple things. Number one, you need to do exactly what I tell you to do, because if you don't, it can all go the wrong way. But if you just follow the instructions until you learn, right, we'll teach you, but we're going to need that attention. And you need to understand how your mortgage works. It's like a set of steps. In this case, 360 steps to get to the top, 360 being the number of months over 30 years. Every time you make a mortgage payment, you're taking one step further, okay? And each one of those steps, there's a principal component and an interest component to your payment. It's important you understand that in month one, about $934 of the $1193.89 is interest. And in month two, that drops to $933. And in month three, guesses?
932.
Yeah, around $932. And the reason I show you this is because you have to understand and have perspective on pace. At this pace, it takes 17 and a half years before 50% of your payment goes to principal and 50% goes to interest. Now remember what I said about us, you know, if we don't get results right away, right? We live in a world of instant gratification, right? If it doesn't happen right away, we tend to quit. You know, like you go to a gym January 1st, right? And you can't find a machine to work out on. But you go January 15th and you can't find someone to talk to, right? That's what happens. We didn't get the result in 2 weeks, everybody's gone. Mass exodus, right? Everybody has great intentions on the first day. Well, we need to do something to change this pace or else we'll all quit. So, what I want to show you is how to skip steps, because when you skip steps on your mortgage amortization schedule, you also cancel the corresponding interest payment that goes along with the step that you skipped. Remember I said what I'm teaching is kind of like preventative medicine. It's like Eastern medicine for your mortgage, okay? We got to prevent the interest from getting there in the first place, because once it's charged every day, right, it's there, you got to pay it. Whether you've refinanced 10 times, and you got to pay it, and you pass it on to your kids and they have to pay it. Okay, so it doesn't go away. If you understand this pace, then you'll understand the power in what I'm about to show you. So I'm going to do a very quick calculation for these people. You know, first of all, I'm going to ask them, how are you going to pay this off in a faster, at a faster pace than what I just showed you? And they're going to say the same thing almost every time. They're going to say, well, I have big plans. I'm going to save, and make lump sum payments, right? And that's the theory. But if the theory was true, and we were actually doing it, then we wouldn't have the debt problem that we have in this country, where the statistics say we're spending $1.60 for every dollar we earn. Okay? And that's a product of two things. We're not getting there fast enough, right? So we're borrowing more and so on. We don't have the requisite knowledge to do the right things, so we end up doing the wrong things. Well, if that was the case, I'd say to these people, well, if you did that and you saved every dime of $1,000 every month for 12 months, so let's just look at 1 year, because I don't know about you, I barely know what I'm going to have for breakfast tomorrow. I can't predict what's going to be happening in my life in 5 years, 10 years, much less 30 years, yes? So we look 1 year at a time, we'll reevaluate next year. But for this year, if you paid every dime of your discretionary money to your mortgage, it would be $12,000 extra, right? And that would be great. But it's really not realistic. The fact is that most people overestimate what's coming in and underestimate what's going out. So what we're first going to do is take this number and subtract 25% just as a buffer. I'm a big believer in buffers. We're left with $750 a month. True discretionary income, multiply that by 12, and this family, without making more money or spending less, could only pay an additional $9,000 to the principal of their mortgage. The problem is they got to wait to earn that money, and while waiting to earn that money, typically what happens is we go save, something happens, right? Start back at zero, save, something happens. So how do we get that money to the principal of the mortgage as fast as possible? We have to use somebody else's money. So I'm going to tell this family to go out and borrow $9,000. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell this family, you got to trust me for 1 year. If I don't make a significant impact to your financial life in 1 year by doing what I tell you to do, then you never have to talk to me again, and I'll make you a promise no matter what, you will not be further behind. You will 1,000% be ahead no matter what, because the system is actually consumer proof. Okay? So you can never be behind, and you will be significantly ahead. I'm going to ask you to trust me, and the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is transfer $9,000 today from your line of credit to your mortgage, bringing the balance on your mortgage from 220 down to 211. Sometimes when I do this workshop, I hear it, right? And it's an indication to me that someone thinks that we've borrowed more money. But do we have more debt, less debt, or the same debt? We have the same debt. It's a really important, it's an important realization that you understand we have the same debt. We just shifted that from a very aggressive account to a very friendly account, okay? Now we're going to deal with this problem in a minute because this is a new problem, but I want to show you what just happened here in numbers, because when you see this, you'll understand that just this is the key to everything that I'm going to show you tonight. What you just did was you took $9,000 of the bank's money and you moved it to the mortgage. Now it would have taken 33 monthly payments of $1,193.89 to drop the mortgage balance from 220 to 211. Did everybody get that part?
Yeah.
It would have taken 33 regular monthly payments in order to drop the balance from 220 to 211, which you did in one fell swoop. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you learn that you can jump stairs going up. You don't have to go first, right? One at a time. You can skip them. Well, when you skip them on the mortgage, essentially what you do is you cancel the interest payment that goes along with each monthly payment that you skipped. Okay? Because remember how the mortgage accrues interest. It's every day. Well, it's not there. You drop the balance to 211 in one fell swoop, so the next day you just don't have that money there to accrue interest on. Does it make sense? Okay? So the savings, okay, remember, how much interest was this going to charge us over 30 years? 210. The savings for having just done this, one day, just done this, is $29,000 of interest that will never get to your mortgage in the first place. Okay, you leveraged it out. Remember preventative medicine, Eastern medicine for your mortgage? That's what this is. Okay. Okay, so all we've done is move this $9,000 from here on forward with regards to the mortgage. For the rest of the year, we're just going to make our mortgage payments. We've already done what we're going to do, yes.
So I'm assuming there's no penalties when you make that 9,000 payment, right?
It's a great question. Typically, the average mortgage has 10 to 20% prepayment privilege. And if you do the quick math on this family could pay $9,000 and it's less than 5% of 220. Now, it usually fits. I'm yet to find a case where it didn't fit. It's a great question, though. Okay? So
the answer was you are not paying, in this case, you're not paying the penalty because
there would be no penalty for this.
No.
Yeah, no penalty. This would be totally doable with any mortgage right now in the marketplace. Yeah. Okay? So you've moved the $9,000, you've got this new problem. Well, how are you going to manage that? Well, here's where the beauty of changing the way you do your banking comes into play. So now instead of a checking account, which I've told you to abandon, we're now going to use our line of credit as a checking account. Did you know that the line of credit, personal unsecured line of credit in Canada, has exactly the same functionality as a checking account? You can write checks from it. Your payroll can be deposited into it. You get a debit card for it. Everything that you can do with a checking account, you can do with a personal line of credit, unsecured. The difference is, whose money are you using? The bank's. Yeah, instead of yours, you're using the bank's. So I'm going to submit to you that this is your new checking account. This will be your new savings account. This is where you'll build savings, because every penny put into the mortgage has a big return on investment, as you just saw. So your new checking account is here. We're going to put the income in. Now, if you remember the functionality of this account, how it charges interest, it's amazing. It charges interest, simple interest, based on the average daily balance at the end of the month. And it only charges you interest once a month. So the object here to manage this is to keep this balance as low as possible for as many days as possible through the month. Are you with me? Okay? That's the goal. So what we're gonna do, if this family makes $6,000, and let's say they get paid twice a month, like most people, the first paycheck goes in here and drops the balance to $6,000. If we didn't have any expenses, 2 weeks later, $3,000 more would come, and we'd have a balance of $3,000. So opening day of the month, we start with $9,000. For 2 weeks, we have a balance of $6,000. For another 2 weeks, we have a balance of $3,000. But you gotta ask, where do the expenses go? Well, the expenses are gonna go on your credit card, as many as possible. Now, I know not every payment that you make in life can go on a credit card, but businesses have been doing this for a long, long time. They give their sales staff expense cards, right? It's not a new thing. The only thing that really consistently can't go on your credit card today is your mortgage payment. Almost everything else, food, gas, travel, you name it, if you wanted it to, it could likely go on a credit card for the most part. For the purposes of this example, I'm just going to assume that the whole $5,000, to make it simple for you, goes on the credit card. So if you rack up $5,000 of expenses on your credit card, okay, in the month, and all your income just sat here, and again, I'm only showing it to you this way for clarity's sake, okay? On the last day of the month, you could pay the credit card off using the line of credit. Whose money?
The banks.
The bank's. And you would end up at a balance $1,000 less than you started, in and around the $8,000 mark. You would pay no interest here, and you would get all your points for the $5,000 of expenses that you put on it throughout the month, okay? And the cost, here's the magic, the cost to do this throughout that month for this family would be about $33 a month. Simple interest, charged on a balance of about $5,000 times 6%. Just over $5,000, 6% simple interest. You could do the math yourself. It's very simple. It's about $33 a month. Does everybody follow that? Here's the brilliance. Remember this? Remember how we said every month that you go forward, about $1 more goes to principal, $1 less to interest? Well, we skipped 33 payments with that payment we made to the mortgage. So what happens is the very next mortgage payment is actually payment number 34 on the schedule, which has about $34 more to principal, less to interest, just by nature. So what you'll find is almost in every scenario, the amount of your next mortgage payment that is automatically going more to principal and less to interest cancels out everything you're paying on the line of credit to make the whole thing work. What you're left with is the savings every year on the mortgage. And if you did this year in, year out, this mortgage with this family, without them getting a raise over the time, without making more money, without spending less, without changing anything except the way they do their banking, this mortgage will be paid off in 12 and a half years, and instead of $210,000 in interest, they would pay $76,000 in interest. And if you do the math on that, over 12 years, it's about $1,000 a month tax-free money back in that family's pocket. Any family can't use $1,000 tax-free money back in their pocket every month. This is just, call it 21st century banking for the consumer. It's just flipping the game. Yes?
Actually, if you're replacing line of credit, replacing your checking account line of credit, you're saving almost $10 a month in fees.
10, that would be light, but you're probably saving more than that. Yeah, there are ripple effect benefits, no question. It's not a difficult system to implement by any stretch. It's just that nobody ever showed you. People always said to me at the beginning, when I was doing this workshop, people would say, hey Chris, this is so good. 2 questions. Number 1, why aren't the banks shutting you down? And number 2, why isn't everybody doing it? And the answers are very, very clean. First one, why aren't the banks shutting you down? Well, because if you pay your mortgage back faster, they just lend the money to somebody else. No need to shut me down. And number 2, why isn't everybody doing it? So you just don't know yet. I don't know anyone else teaching it.
The bank will.
Your bank, the funny thing about the bank is, I used to wonder about that. The thing is, the people you're dealing with the bank are consumers. They've just been trained in the bank's products and whatnot. They just don't know. They've never been shown. Right? Their eyes will Google if you go teach them this.
Exactly. Even if they would charge you.
Because it's a system, it's not, and they teach on certain topics only, that's all.
So a lot of people say, you're right, a lot of people say, hey, I'm kind of doing something like this, or I kind of felt like
Yes.
this could, but you've never had it explained to you inside of a
No.
system that makes it easy to do. Okay, we call it the method, okay? And it's actually quite simple. It'll put you on pace to build equity in your home 4 to 5 times the normal pace, okay? Any questions about this before we take a quick break? Yes?
So assume the interest rate is 3%
Yeah.
instead of 5.15%.
Yes.
And how much money will you save? I mean,
Well, you'll save less because you're being charged less. That's all relative. Does it make sense?
okay.
So it's a good thing.
And
And if the rate is higher, you'll save more because the rate is charging you more. There's more to save.
and do you calculate like in 30 years how much interest rate for 99,000 in line credit?
Yeah. Well, it's about $33 a month. This just keeps going. It's the same thing every month, right?
Right.
6,000 in, 5,000 out. 6,000 in, 5,000 out. What'll happen is, over 9 to 12 months, the line of credit will get to zero. You understand? It's coming down by $750 to $1,000 a month. When it gets to zero, that's the trigger to do it again. 9,000 more.
Right.
Do you understand? So it's a cycle.
Okay.
The faster, it's a race, basically. Now, people will say, Chris, what happens if I do this? I borrow the $9,000 and then I lose my job the next day and now I can't pay it back. Okay, it's a great question. Maybe the golden question.
Okay.
But now that you know what you know about all 3 accounts, and we could call losing your job a lot of things. None of them would be nice, right? If you called it one of those things happening, would you agree you would rather have 211 owing here and 9 here than 220 here while you are down?
Right.
You see, this is not a magical system that does magical things for you. Life still goes on. You will speed up and slow down as life deals you good and bad. But you'll always be in a better place doing it this way than you will what you were taught as a kid. Because you know where we all learned how to do our banking? Someone we trusted that we didn't really ask questions to. My father, I just did what he did. I didn't ask, I assumed he knew. Why would he show me anything, why would he show me wrong? It's just what he knew, and where did he learn it? From his father, and his father, and his father. So at the end of the day, you are in a better shape no matter what, right? Because this is not, I'm not saying to you, you know, throw some pixie dust in your bank and everything's going to be great. It's not a rosy picture. Life is going to speed you up and slow you down, but you're never going to be in a bad spot. Does it make sense?
Makes sense.
You'll always be in a better spot doing it this way than doing it the other way. In fact, if you learned this when you were a kid, and then I got up here tonight and tried to show you checking account, savings account, the presentation would be really short. Right. It's the truth. It's just you learn that first, and it's ingrained in you, and I recognize that. Coming up here, I've been doing this so long, I just recognize I see the same faces every time I do it. And you know, it's hard to accept that we've been doing it this way all along. We've kind of been sucker punched by our banks. But they're just a business, right? They spend millions and millions of dollars to study us and study how we behave and what we do and what matters to us. You know what matters to people most? Security, certainty, convenience. That's what they prey on. That's what your bank fees do for you, right? Convenience, right? It's all convenience, right?
Convenience card.
You got it.
I got a question though. So those 2 accounts,
Yeah.
the line of credit and the credit card, would
Yeah.
have to be dedicated to this bill. Like you don't want to be using them for other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's flexibility in this, and I love the flexibility of it, because if somebody sends you a better credit card with better points, you can just sub it in. Somebody offers you a lower rate interest on your line of credit, sub it in. Guy like me comes along and says, hey, I can do better on your mortgage for you than 5.15, and you can sub that in. So this is not Royal Bank, Royal Bank, Royal Bank. This is not Scotia, Scotia, Scotia. It's whatever is best at whatever time. It is totally flexible. But yes, at any one time you would want to dedicate a line of credit, a credit card to the system.
Right, okay.
Another popular question people say is, well, this was all nice, Chris, but My credit card has a balance on it and my line of credit does too.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully what this does is gives you the motivation necessary to take care of that first, because that's the starting point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Before you attack this, you want to get this taken care of, okay? Now some people say, Chris, how do I do that fast? Well, the only fast way is to refinance your mortgage, put this there, and then start working the system now that you've seen this, because hope springs eternal, right? You know, back to the convenience thing, that what banks do though, is, you know, I heard something somewhere that the only thing in life that's undefeated is temptation. It was such a great saying, right? And it's absolutely true. And so with convenience, what they do is they tempt us. We're tempted in ways my parents were never tempted as in their generation. Like for example, you know, when my parents were young, and they're in their mid-60s now, when they were young, if it snowed a lot and they couldn't go out, there was just no spending money that day, right? Now, I could sit inside my house and drain my entire life savings because I'm bored, right? And click away, right? So we're faced with temptation that they never had. It's a different world. And so we actually require systems like this. Yeah, to be in place. My father was a really simple man. $10 came in. It was really easy math. $8 went to the house. $2 went to the table, right? It was just that simple. It's not that world anymore. So we really need to have these types of crutches, so to speak. Yes?
How different would your method be if it was a secured loan?
Okay. So the problem with a secured line is that you lose the ability to leverage. This whole thing is based on leverage. And here's where I want to get into some of the psychology with you. The discipline that's required to bank wisely and be a savvy financial manager of your own money is lacking in a lot of people. We're distracted all day, we have so much going on, life is busy and so on. This system builds in the discipline you need, and here's how it does it. It combines an unsecured line of credit with a closed-ended mortgage, meaning once I put the money into the mortgage, I can't take it back out. It costs me money, I gotta refinance the mortgage to get it out. It's forced savings that way. So if you commit to doing this, you're committing to building equity in that house, right? Every third or fourth or fifth year when your mortgage comes up for maturity, you can take the money out if you need it to do something else. We're gonna get to that in part 2, which you're gonna be fascinated by, but that's the whole, okay, why do I not teach people just to pay the mortgage off? Because the money's just stagnant, it's just sitting there. You build the equity, take it out and do something with it. Well, if you have the peace of mind to know how you're doing it, it makes sense. If you don't, it's just a mess. Secured line takes that away from you. It combines the mortgage and a line of credit together. If I move money from my line of credit to my mortgage, I haven't done anything. They're both charging interest the same way. A secured line of credit charges interest 12 times compounded a year. It's like a credit card. People don't know that, right? So the functionality is very different on a secured or unsecured. But the attraction is that the rate is 3.5% instead of 6. But 3.5% compounded monthly on a huge amount of money will get you a lot faster than 6% on a smaller amount of money. Just think of the mental approach to where your focus goes. How many of you ever had the thought, first of all, I should have asked this at the beginning, how many have mortgage? You all? Okay, good. Okay, so that would have stopped there. One person puts up their hand. Okay, so if you have a mortgage, you might have had this thought at some point. You might have thought, wow, like I pay and I pay and I pay and this thing just never comes down. It's just not going anywhere. Certainly not fast enough, right, to give me any kind of momentum. And so what happens when we get into that position is we do different things with our money. Let's say, for example, $5,000 comes in a windfall, a tax return, something, a bonus, anything. And we look at the mortgage, and the better part of our brain says, I should pay that to my mortgage. And then you go, it's not even gonna dent it. Let's go on vacation. Let's go buy that big screen TV. That's the reality, right? Now, contrast that with, now I shift your focus and I say, forget the mortgage. Once a year we do the transfer, forget the mortgage. Now, your focus is get this to zero as fast as possible. Now the $5,000 comes in and you go, that's half. That's half. Honey, we're not going on vacation. Now that might get you into trouble. But, right, you see the difference, the mentality of how you approach it. Right, so we all know what to do, but we don't always do the right things. Yes?
So this is a combination of the revolving equity line of credit, right?
This is not an equity line of credit.
No?
This is a personal,
Okay.
unsecured line of credit.
Because my wife and I, we actually have a revolving equity line of credit.
Mhm.
So essentially what we're paying is your left-hand column. So it's,
Yeah, you know what that's great for?
yeah.
Accessing it. Accessing the equity once you built it. Okay? But you need to have the discipline not to use the equity while you're building it. Right? So have anybody ever heard of the Manulife 1? Okay? Manulife 1 was a great product. It came out, when it came out, I thought this is, uh-oh,
Yeah.
right? They got it. But what Manulife 1 did was they took all of it and they put it into one account. And this should illustrate what I'm talking about with the discipline and the fact that there's separate vehicles. They took away the leveraging. So what happens is, they're pitching to you that if all of your income goes into this one account and all your expenses come out and you make more than you spend, you're going to pay less interest, and they're right. But if this system can save you $135,000 over 12 years, Manulife 1 will save you a quarter of that. Still good, but not quite what's maximizing or optimizing your ability on your income and so on and so forth. Because the reverse is also true. You put all your income in there, your expenses come out. You need extra money sometime, where do you go for it? Exactly where all your money sits. So it just goes up and down and up and down. And every time you do that and you have that ability, right, to do it all the time, if you're not disciplined, you lose the benefits over time. Funny, when I first started doing this, somebody once called me a day after the workshop and they're like, I did it. I'm like, what did you do? I'm like, well, I did it. I went home and I transferred the $9,000 but hadn't calculated everything to make sure that was the right number for them, right? So the disclaimer here is, there's a calculation that determines how much to take from your line of credit and pay to your mortgage, and it's based on what you could pay back inside of 12 months, right? So it's not advisable to think, well, I have 3 lines of credit, I'll just leverage all 3, right? Because you want to be able to pay them back in a reasonable period of time so as not to extend yourself to a place where you just got another big debt on a line of credit. Okay, you're going to evaluate your income, your expenses each year, right? Build in a little bit of buffer, multiply by 12, that's how you get to 9,000. It's a formula, okay? Yeah. And if we talk later, or you work with us on it, I'll give you the formula in an email and so on, okay? So this is how you build equity efficiently. That's what this first part was all about. And 2 things should have come out of it. Number 1, you should realize that there's a better way. And some of you might have thought that all along, just didn't know what it was. Here it is. It's the most efficient way to build equity in a house. And number 2, you might at this point feel like, okay, maybe this Chris guy knows a thing or 2 about cash. Spent a lot of time learning, and all informal, all street smart numbers. Not, I went to school for 10 years and I learned none of this. I knew nothing when I started. And this is just me sharing it with you. I want to share one more thing with you.